Hi, Dave Spaulding, Handgun Combatives. That was a simple speed load. In that particular case, I was able to do that in 1¼ seconds and still get good hits down range. You're asking yourself now, why are you practicing speed loads? Well, in my classes, I still teach them. I know it's not the in thing right now, but I kind of agree with the old motto of the Heckler & Koch International Training Division. You should reload when you want to, not when you have to. And let's face it, what's an emergency reload? An emergency reload is a speed load with slide manipulation. So it's like having training wheels on your bicycle. Teach the speed load, then teach the emergency reload. Also, if I put 5 or 6 rounds in your gun and you're practicing speed loads and that emergency reload happens, you get that surprise or startle effect that will happen when you do have an actual emergency reload. So I still teach the speed load and then tell you that when an emergency reload happens, manipulate the slide. Now that brings us to a current controversy. How do you manipulate your slide when you're performing an emergency reload? Well, let me think about this for a second. I know. You have no idea how much I do not care how you manipulate your slide during your emergency reload. Don't care. I don't care if you want to use the shooting hand thumb, the support hand thumb, you want to pull back on the slide. I don't care. It makes no difference to me whatsoever. There's only one technique that I happen to disagree with, and it's probably the most commonly taught technique. And it's called the power stroke, or rip the gun off your slide. What am I talking about? Well, let me clear out my pistol here. Make sure it's empty. What I'm talking about is you come up over to, you insert the magazine, you come up over top the slide and you do something that looks like this. Look familiar? Look how far apart my hands are. Look how far apart my hands are. What are they? A foot? 18 inches maybe, depending? Not only are you pulling back on the slide, you're pushing forward with the gun, and now look at the distance I have to cover to bring my hands back together again. Why do I think that's bad? Let's look at this for a minute. This is a locked open pistol. How far do you have to move this back to get it off the slide stop? Now I know the power stroke is designed to get full compression of the recoil spring. Watch this. That's it. That's full compression of the recoil spring. How far did that slide travel? Less than 1/2 inch? Why do my hands have to be a foot to 18 inches apart to move a slide 1/2 inch or less? Think about that. Does that make sense to you? Give it critical thought. Forget tradition, because we teach us out of tradition mostly. Does that make sense? When you could easily do something that looks like this. See how much less movement is involved in that? And I'm still doing that overhand technique that many people like. There's really 4 methods to drop the slide. And as I said, shooting hand thumb, support hand thumb, you can turn the gun, pull it back like you're grabbing hold of a rope, or you can go overhand in what I call a saddle grip and pull it back. Don't care. The only thing I want you to do is minimize the motion involved in doing that. Now, my Glock has my bullet slide lock lever. Can I come up here too? Can you kind of get that, Darren? You see the lever there? My thumb does not ride on it. It's actually forward of my shooting hand thumb, but I can get it with that thumb, or I can manipulate it with this thumb. I don't like my thumb resting right here, either keeping it from locking open or pushing it up. And that's what happens with a stock factory Glock slide lever, so I invented my own. I also want to use my thumb here, and I don't want to have to reach over top of my shooting hand thumb. I want to go forward of it. So that's the reason I invented the bullet forward slide lock lever, which you can buy on my website, handguncombatives.com. Now, let's go back here. Let's load the gun up. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go through a series of speed loads. and I'm going to show you the time difference between the 4 techniques I'm talking about, and then at the end we'll add the power stroke, and then you can see which one you like the best and if the time difference means that much. In a pistol fight at close range, it's going to be over in a couple seconds. Don't believe me, research it yourself. These things don't last very long. So you decide for yourself. Now, I've got an empty magazine, so I'm going to be performing the speed load, working the slide, and we'll look at the time. Now, I did the earlier one in 1 1/4 seconds. No big deal. Dump one, put one in, back to shooting. Let's see how much time it takes to add using the shooting hand thumb to do this, okay? So let's set that up. Darren, you ready? Okay, here we go. Okay, that was 1.5 seconds. So it added about a 1/4 second to drop the slide with the thumb. That is the fastest technique. There's no way around it. This is the technique the high-end competition folks like to use because it is fastest. What's the problem with it? Well, you're asking an awful lot of the shooting hand thumb because it has to go down here, hit the button to eject, then it has to go up here and push down. And let's face it, if you get the magazine, if you drop the slide before the magazine is seated, then you got to click. Empty gun. So now you're manipulating the pistol, so it could actually end up being longer. Never happened, you say? I see it happening all the time in my classes with very little stress. All it requires is you just to get that sequence out of time a little bit. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to set up the one I prefer, which is to use my support hand. As I insert the magazine, I rock my thumb up, acquire my grip. Let's see how much time that takes. Okay, insert, hit it with my thumb. That was 1.6, so it took a 1/10 of a second more than using this. And that makes some sense because that's going to require a little bit more time. So 1 1/4, 1.5, 1.6. Now let's go into manual manipulation of the slide with our support hand. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to insert the magazine. I'm going to turn the gun into my support hand, and I'm going to grab a hold of it like this and pull back, like I'm grabbing a hold of a rope. Now there's some out there going to say, yeah, instructor so-and-so's doing that now. You stole that from him. You know, I'm not going to get into all that, but what I'm going to tell you is to read the original version of my book, Handgun Combatives, which I wrote in 2002 and was published in 2003. And I talked about turning the gun and pulling on the slide like you're grabbing a rope. Now, I probably didn't think of that either. But to say that I'm stealing this from somebody that's contemporarily talking about it, it's not true. So, just throwing that out there. So let's look at manipulating the slide like that. See how much time that takes. Okay, that took 2 seconds. So we added 4/10 of a second to pull the slide back. And if you can see, up, turn, pull back, reacquire the grip, took 4/10, almost a half second. But let me throw this out at you. Do you know how long the blink of an eye is? It's 0.32 seconds. So by adding 0.4 to that manipulation, we added basically the blink of an eye. Is that a lot of time? Is that important? That's up for you to decide. So let's set it up again, and what we're going to do is insert it, and I'm going to turn the gun into my hand, and I'm going to saddle grip it or overhand it. Now, I turn the gun into my hand because it's more efficient. It lowers the time than trying to reach up over top and do everything with the support hand alone. I kind of meet it in the middle. Let's take a look, see what that looks like. Okay, that was 2.1. So we added another 1/10 of a second to, instead of doing this, to come up over top and doing that. Is that 1/10 of a second important? That's up to you. Last but not least, let's do a complete power stroke where I'm really pulling back on it, ripping the slide off the gun kind of a thing, and take a look and see how much time that takes. Okay, that took 2.37 seconds. So we added, what, 0.27. So we added about another 1/4 of a second. So from a speed load at 125 to a power stroke at 237, we added just a little over a second. Is a second important to you? I don't know. In a situation, though, that may only last 2, 3, 4, 5 seconds, that could be all the time in the world. And let's face it, you know, the more manipulations you do, the more time you spend, and time is life. So you have to decide. In the end, I show all of these in my class. The only thing I don't care for is the power stroke because of the distance involved. But you know what? Beyond that, I really don't care how you manipulate your slide. You decide what's right for your real world of work, the type of weapon you carry. But the only thing I would suggest is as you work that slide, keep the motion minimal. Thanks for checking in. Dave Spalding, Handgun Combatives.